Hi, it's Gene, retired in Mexico, and you can see my cat tail here. This is my cat Leo, and I'm with my special guest, Professor Gumbo from Phoenix, Arizona. We are high school buddies, and we're rekindling our taste in music and getting reacquainted. So, the professor was my mentor, and hi, Leo, he's back there. He wants to be part of the video, and yeah. Anyway, we're glad you're on the channel. If you're watching this, I'm on Instagram, Patreon, and Facebook. So any engagement we appreciate. And today we're going to do 1977, our top 10 albums. 77. We just we just logged on a couple minutes ago. We agree is a loaded year. So we're really going to enjoy this. We're going to take turns counting down the top 10. The professor will start first this time. But first of all, let me give you just a little background on 1977, because it's easy to forget, right? I mean, that was a long time ago, 48 years ago. So I just have a few bullet points here. But 77 musically was the drama of the Sex Pistols. That was a big deal. They actually had three record contracts in 1 year. I don't think any band, well, I know that's never happened. And they would be signed and then dropped and signed and dropped. And Sid Vicious joined the Sex Pistols. And then they went out on the River Thames when the Queen was going down the river on the Silver Jubilee. And they played God Save the Queen as loud as they could and tried to disrupt the Queen's boat party. So punk was in the news, safety pins, getting gel on your hair and doing spikes. In rhythm and blues, Donna Summer released I Feel Love. And that was important because it was the first all synth backing track in the history of music. It was, of course, a disco song. So the electronica and disco were merging. And of course, that was Giorgio Moroder. Legionnaire's disease. You remember that, Jim?
I do. I do.
That
I,
that broke
I
out.
barely sur I barely survived it.
uh, Interpol created the video copyright warning, and that's still in effect today. So if you watch a DVD, few people still do that. Or even if you're watching a movie, there's that big warning about how you're going to be arrested or fined if you copy um, material. So that's still in effect. The last guillotine execution. Yeah, if you can believe that. In 1978, they chopped somebody's head off in France, and that was the last time they did that.
I
Smallpox
barely
was
sur
eradicated. What's that?
I barely survived that too.
Ah, yeah, smallpox was eradicated. You never had that, I hope.
Nope, nope.
Uh, and here, don't make a joke about this, okay, Professor? Don't make a joke. But the rings of Uranus were discovered. And then in deaths, we had some pretty big deaths in 77. The biggest one would have been Elvis Presley in August of 77. But right around that time, I remember Mark Bolan of T-Rex died as well in that car crash. So Elvis Presley, Mark Bolan, Maria Callas, who was one of the great opera singers, Groucho Marx, Bing Crosby, Charlie Chaplin, and then, of course, Ronnie Van Zant, Steve and Cassie Gaines went down in that plane, the Leonard Skinner plane crash. So there were some pretty big deaths in the celebrity world. And the top films, I only picked three, but boy, were these big ones. Star Wars, Saturday Night Fever, and Annie Hall. So does that bring you back some memories?
Yeah, yeah, the definitely. I have not seen Saturday Night Fever for many, many years. I used to show Annie Hall to my seniors, my AP seniors when we were doing our humor unit. So I've seen that, in the last decade. And Star Wars sort of embedded in my DNA,
Yeah.
including John Williams' ripoff of Holst's Mars.
Yeah. So I'm going to let you start. We're going to go 10 through 1, and then we're going to do our honorable mentions. The professor has 5, I have 7, sorry. And okay, so go ahead. Let us know what your number 10 is.
Okay, my number 10 is a debut album by a band that really had a different sound. I mean, it really, it struck me when I first heard it, and I got into them pretty much at the ground floor. And this band is a band from New York, and they, you know, even though 77 was the year of punk, it also was the year of what might be a kind of post-punk known as new wave. And this was Talking Heads 77. Okay. Not the best Talking Heads 77, but what a damn good debut album. Okay. I mean, it just was like they just kind of went from strength to strength for a while there. And then they kind of leveled off and made interesting albums, but they weren't as uh, absolutely earth shaking. But their first half dozen or so albums were amazing. Um, and Talking Head 77 was the was their first, and it was the first. I mean, it was not produced by Brian Eno, which their subsequent several albums were, but it has kind of a stripped down sound to it. But you've got some fantastic playing. Jerry Harrison on guitar and keyboards, Chris Frantz on drums, and his wife Tina Weymouth, or Martina Weymouth, as she was credited on this album,
Hmm.
on bass. And she was always an amazing bass player. What really got my attention was the crazy yelping singing of David Byrne, and his and very melodic songs, but crazy lyrics often too. Um, And from beginning to end, the album is good, but for for me, it ends brilliantly with the last two songs. The first one is still one of my favorite Talking Head songs and one of the most famous Talking Head song, Psycho Killer. Qu'est-ce que c'est? Fa 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 fa. And I love when Byrne sings, "We are vain and we are blind. I hate people when they're not polite."
Yeah.
Um, so great song, uh, Psycho Killer, and then the following song, the last song on the album, "Hold Up," which is a real rocker, an
Hmm.
up-tempo rocker by the band. There were some other great songs that I thought about, but I wanted something that kind of contrasted with the sound of Psycho Killer. So, um, I really like that song. I like at one point when he says, "With a little practice, I was," and so it's a good song, it's a fun song, great album, great introduction to the band. If you aren't familiar with Talking Heads and you want to start, it's a great place to start. It's not their best, but you listen to it, you'll be blown away, and you'll say, "Wow, what else could be even better?" And for the next few albums, they kept getting better with each um, entry. So Talking Heads 77 and Psycho Killer and Pulled Up.
Hold up. Yeah, pulled up. Okay, you said hold up. Yeah, pulled up.
No, I said Pulled Up. Pulled Up.
Yeah, that's one of my 3 favorite songs. And the version of that on the that album, the live album, the name of this band is Talking Heads. The live version of Pulled Up on there is really awesome. It's might be my favorite track from that double live album. So yeah, great choices. Great choices. So my number 10 is a top 10 artist for me. And I don't know if you know this is a top 10 artist for me, but it's Brian Eno. And it's the album Before and After Science, an album that has dropped a little bit. It probably would have been a top 5 album for me earlier. Um, I still love it. It's an interesting album. It was the one that he released. he did discrete music after Another Green World. I think that was the next album chronologically, which was totally ambient. And then he went back to doing vocals again, though not every song on here has vocals. Some are instrumentals. Um, and it's roughly got two sides. It's the first side is mostly up tempo, though there is one ambient piece on the first side, and then the second side opens with Here He Comes, and then goes into a bunch of ambient pieces. So it's not exactly divided into two sides the way, say, David Bowie's Low is, but it's roughly an up tempo. You know, you have King's Lead Hat, which, by the way, is an anagram of Talking Heads, and I love this album. And I should have taken a track from both sides, but I'm a little partial to the second side. So my two tracks are the second and third tracks on the B side, which is Julie With and By This River. Both songs that talk about water. That's kind of a theme on this album. I think it's accidental, but there's three or four songs that evoke water and sky imagery. And Eno was really kind of a master of painting pictures in your mind. His lyrics didn't always make logical sense, but they made emotional sense. And you always get these little pictures. So when when Julie is running her fingers through the sea and these types of images, you get it's just the keyboard work and some of the decaying electronics and the descending chords and things, just beautiful songs. But yeah, I like everything on this album. It's not my favorite Brian Eno, but it's top five Brian Eno for me, before and after Science.
Yeah, it's an amazing album, and it's also funny that for a self-professed non-musician, it's such a musical album. Um, Also,
Correct.
what I mentioned with the lyrics, at that point, he was still when he was ready to write the lyrics, he would just turn on the mic and start singing nonsense words and nonsense sounds, and go back and listen and see what he could, create from those, which
Mm.
is why he has such Dada lyrics often. So yeah, great album, great album. My next one is one that many people won't have on there, so I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, Gene. But it is by a personal favorite of mine, and that is Peter Hamel. And by 1977, Peter Hamel had uh, dissolved Van der Graaf Generator and then reformed Van der Graaf Generator. And then during 1977, there was another dissolving of the band, and they called themselves just Vandergraaf. But if anybody's been watching these, please watch these. You might remember that for 1976, I had the Vandergraaf Generator album, Still Life. And it had a song on it called La Rosa. Wasn't one of the songs I chose, but it's a great song, of course. And this album was done right after that album, and it has many of the Van der Graaf Generator people. As a matter of fact, I think it has all of them. Um, it, Really, the main difference between Van der Graaf Generator and Peter Hamill's solo is the content of the songs more than anything else. But this one, I mentioned back in 75 that Bob Dylan's Blood on the Tracks, and I think, Gene, you might have agreed with me on this, is, if not the greatest breakup album ever, one of the greatest breakup albums ever. Well, this is probably tied for it. Hamill had had a very sad, I don't want to say necessarily acrimonious, but sad separation. And he wrote this album about that. Not every song is maudlin, but it's a very painful album. And it's interesting because on some of the tracks, his pain comes out it's a real rocker with Hamill playing guitar, which with Vandergraaf he hardly ever did. But it's and that the first song I would choose is the opening track called "Crying Wolf," and it's a very intense, um, painful, rocking song. But then there's a beautiful song that is about the breakup more than anything else, and that is "This Side of the Looking Glass." And it has a string accompaniment. It starts very soft with Hamill singing softly and then becoming much more powerful as the song goes through its 7+ minutes. Um, and it's a heartbreaking song if you listen to the lyrics and you know what was going on. Two very, very different sounds, and yet they work really well in context of the album. So Peter Hamill over with This Side of the Looking Glass and, excuse me, before This Side of the Looking Glass, Crying Wolf and This Side of the Looking Glass.
Excellent. Yeah, I like Peter Hamill. He keeps missing my list, but I am a big fan. And of course, it was just so great to see him at the Rhythm Room. Um, my number nine, you already mentioned it, Talking Head 77. Uh, you're right. What a great debut. And the album has actually grown on me because I was always a big fan of the second, third, and fourth albums. But I've gone back to this one and it's just so much fun. You said so much about it. Tina Weymouth, by the way, is one of my favorite bass players. And I think I figured it out one day. I'm not a musician, but I had an epiphany listening to the song Cities from Fear of Music, which has a bass line that you can hum. It goes bum 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 bum. I mean, I can bring it right to mind. And David's there playing the rhythm. And one day I said, okay, I see what they're doing. They're doing the rhythm on the guitar and the melody on the bass. They're switching those two instruments from what you classic, because normally we hear the melody on the guitar or the keyboard. So Tina's not only a great rhythm bass player, but she likes to play melodies. And Psycho Killer is a good example. There's a wonderful bass, really
Dun,
catchy
dun,
bass
dun.
riff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and she had no real experience playing bass. She just kind of picked it up and learned it. So they were desperate for a bass player. She was reluctant to join the band, and she's one of my favorite bass players. My two songs, one is Psycho Killer, because I think you have to pick that. Um, and then my other song is No Compassion. They say compassion is a virtue, but I don't have the time.
Yes, great line.
It's just classic Burn, but it has great riff, great guitar. But you could pick a bunch of songs on there. But yeah, Talking Head 77, what a strong debut. So that's my number nine.
Great album. As I said, it had it just a little bit before, one space up. By the way, Tina Weymouth, if you're not familiar with her, she's really cute when she's playing her bass because the bass, she's a very tiny person, and the bass was as big as she was, you know.
Yeah.
When she's holding the bass, it's like, how does she hold that thing? It's like a midget holding a guitar, you know. So um, all right. My number eight is by one of my all-time favorites, as a matter of fact, next to Van Morrison, my all-time favorite artist, is David Bowie, and the album is his second album from 1977, Heroes, and it's sort of a companion to the first album from then, but different. I mean, when I say a companion, it's a combination of songs and ambient instrumental pieces, very influenced by Eno. But uh, there's a number of songs from the first side that I had to think about. Obviously, the song "Heroes," is going to be on there. Heroes, but what was the other one? And that is one that harkens back to an earlier sound by David Bowie, and it is not consistent with the rest of the album and its sound, but I love it. I loved it from the first time I heard it, and that is Sons of the Silent Age. So
Hmm,
Sons of the Silent Age and Heroes from Heroes.
excellent. So my number eight is probably the only album on my list that will slightly surprise you. And I'm only going to pick one song. And I'll tell you why, because there's only two songs on the album.
Ah, okay.
So if I pick two songs, it's the entire album. And I don't think that's fair.
Makes
But
sense.
I am a big, big fan of international music, as you know. And one of my favorite international albums is Fela Kuti's Zombie.
Oh yeah, great album.
Yeah, great album. The song Zombie, which is the one I'm picking, is I think it's like 18 or 19 minutes long. So I'm just going to put that song on our playlist and leave it at that. But he paid a dear price for this. I don't know if you know the story behind it, but Fela, who had multiple wives and had a big compound in outside Lagos, Nigeria, or in Lagos, I'm not sure, somewhere in Nigeria, had declared himself an autonomous country inside Nigeria. And then he did this song called Zombie, which was critical of the Nigerian government. And they rewarded him by invading his compound and going upstairs and throwing his mother out a second story window. I don't know if you knew that story. She died from
No.
the injuries. So you talk about being committed to your art. Yes, they threw his mother out the window. That was what he got for recording this album. He later ran for president. He did not win, and he paid a dear price. But he was a incredible artist, not only a singer who was fluent in English. So many of these lines are in the song "Zombie" is a combination of African language and I think it's African, could be French, but I think it's African, and then some English verses. Obviously, the title is English. Um, but yeah, you talk about being committed to your art, but he was also a sax player and a keyboard player. I think, I think maybe there was a period where Miles Davis was playing keyboards in addition to his trumpet, and I think he might have been influenced by Fela, who liked to add keyboards to his sax playing. But he's a terrific sax player. I believe he plays tenor sax on Zombie, and then on the B side of the album, he plays a soprano sax. But this is infectious, rhythmic Afrobeat music. It would go on to influence numerous people. Famously, Ginger Baker of Cream would go down to Nigeria and record an album with Fela. And a lot of people don't know this. Your album, you had picked Band on the Run as a top 10 album. That was recorded in Lagos, Nigeria. So there were a lot of people like Paul McCartney and Ginger Baker that were going down there because they were very interested in what was happening, that scene down there. So yeah, I'm a huge Fela fan. So just one song, Zombie.
Uh, some years later, didn't the Cranberries do a cover of that?
That's
Just
funny.
kidding. Just kidding.
That's
Um,
funny.
all right. Yeah, I'll have to listen to that again. I have the album, but it's been a long time since I've listened to it. Okay, my number seven from 1977 is the other David Bowie album from 77. Uh, Considered by some to be slightly above, obviously, since I put it at seven and Heroes at eight. I consider it slightly above also. And that is Low by David Bowie. Um, when it first came out, Gene, I remember, and we probably talked about it a bit, that the cover art was interesting, but not revolutionary because it was a shot from the poster of The Man Who Fell to Earth. And it's funny because a year earlier on Station to Station, he used a picture from The Man Who Fell to Earth. And I thought, okay, is Bowie getting artistically lazy here? But it's a very memorable picture with the very orange cover, the profile of Bowie with the high neck coat on and his orange hair. Um, so this album was definitely influenced by Brian Eno's Another Green World. Bowie had heard it and he wanted to do something like it. So he and Eno were friends and he pulled Eno along with him. And then he got Tony Visconti on there, which was, if you've seen did I share that cartoon with you? Um,
Yeah,
of, yeah, it's really funny. Especially since their voices are really Bowie and Visconti done by another person, a comedian, but it sounds like their voices. But throughout the whole running joke of the thing is Bowie is trying to um, do Warzawa, the instrumental or mostly instrumental, um, and uh, and Tony Visconti keeps saying, "I'm Tony Visconti, and I produced the album, or I co-produced the album." But uh, Urzawa is a haunting melody, and it was used to great effect when the uh, neoclassical composer Philip Glass did his Low album, and he used Urzawa as one of the main tracks. It's mostly instrumental, and the instrumental actually was laid down by Eno while Bowie was off doing something else, probably cocaine. And Eno was there in the studio, and he puts together this kind of ambient sound. And Bowie came back, and he really liked it, and he started singing in a kind of mock third world language. Sulamileo. And by the way, when we saw Bowie live in 1978, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that that was the opening track that Bowie came out play. Yeah.
correct.
Um, and so, that's going to be one of them. The other one is a more direct song, and it was the single Sound and Vision. So, David Bowie Low, with the up tempo song Sound and Vision, um, and the low tempo song, no pun intended, um, uh, Urasawa.
Yeah, great. Well, yeah, I like those two picks. My number seven, you'll be pleased with this, but at number seven, I have another debut album, and that is Elvis Costello.
Ah, yes.
My Aim is True, which is still one of my favorite Elvis Costello albums. I'm not really sure what my favorite Elvis Costello album is. I also like Get Happy a lot, and I like Imperial Bedroom a lot, and I like Armed Forces a lot. So, not really sure what my favorite is, but this is pre-Attractions. It's a band called Clover on here, which, by the way, one of the members of Clover who is not on this album because I think he had commitments, but a member of Clover was Huey Lewis,
Mhm.
but he's not on the album. I don't believe he's on the album anywhere. If he is, it's only one track. But what a strong debut. And I remember KZON radio. Mary McCann played Elvis Costello incessantly. She adored him. And so I used to hear him on the radio a lot. Really strong debut. Lyrically, yeah, lyrically, how do I want to describe it? Some people say it's misogynist, but I don't really hear it that way. But it's accurate. I'm not sure the word I'm looking for. It's biting. That's a good word. The lyrics are biting and they're direct. Well, direct in their emotion, not always direct in their meaning. You can take some of these songs with different meanings, but I'm going to go with, and this is really hard because there's so many great songs on here, so many great songs. But I'm going to go. I think you have to go with Allison. It's just such a beautiful ballad, and you left your fingers in the wedding cake. It's just it's just such a great song. Infectious melody, and then no surprise to you, but we both like the song Less Than Zero. So I'm going to go with Allison and Less Than Zero. But Elvis Costello's debut was a breath of fresh air on the radio. That's why I mentioned him being played on KZON. It was just something different from the usual fare we were used to hearing. And I remember, see, I'm trying to provide context. In 1977, Elvis Costello was not really like anyone else we had heard before. I think it was even though he had his influences in old rock and roll and had some influence from Nick Lowe, who produced the album, but still, it sounded pretty darn fresh at the time. So Elvis Costello.
Fantastic album, wonderful album, as you will see from my choice a little later. Okay, you mentioned the Sex Pistols, and they're not on my list. I mean, I appreciate what the Sex Pistols did, and I like Nevermind the Bollocks, but it's never been one of my absolute favorite albums. My favorite punk album from 1977 is the debut by The Clash. And there's an American version that was released in 79 because the 77 British version kept selling so well. But I go to the original British version, The Clash, just the album The Clash. And uh, this was, I mean, the thing about the Clash is they took themselves more seriously than the Sex Pistols did. The Sex Pistols were agents of chaos. An, they were throwing a hand grenade into the rock and roll scene. But if you were to make a playlist of shifting back and forth between early Clash and Sex Pistols, there's a lot of similarities. The biggest difference is in the vocals. Joe Strummer as the main singer, although Mick Jones did some of the singing too. But Joe Strummer didn't have that sneering, obnoxious sound that uh, Johnny Rotten did. Instead, it's very, he had a very angry sound. And it's funny because we talked about with pub rock earlier with Graham Parker, and Joe Strummer originally was in a pub rock band before he joined the Clash. And what's the other thing that's funny about the Clash, and the reason that the Sex Pistols kind of didn't like them, is that the Clash didn't have bona fide punk credentials. Mick Jones was a brilliant guitarist, very influenced by Mott the Hoople, but he had to hide his guitar chops at this point because you didn't want to be virtuoso to the punks. And then Joe Strummer, he was his parents were uh, ambassadors. I don't remember where, but someplace in the East. And uh, so John Miller was his real name, and so he had kind of a upper middle class upbringing, and he had to hide that. He had to pretend to be, a punk. Um, Before David Bowie died, the rock death that hit me the most was when Joe Strummer died, and it was after he had left the Clash, after the Clash had broken up. But it was so sad because it was on a Sunday, I remember that, and he had taken his dogs for a walk, and he went and sat down on the couch and had a major heart attack. And so he probably died fairly peacefully. Um, but he smoked like a chimney, and it was probably his smoking that caused it. But that's a shame because I loved Joe Strummer. As we will see in a couple of years as we go on, um, I had begun to get somewhat disillusioned with rock and roll. Not rock music, I still listen to it, but rock and roll as such. I didn't think anybody really made rock and roll the way that they once did. And then the Clash came along and they restored my faith in rock and roll. So the two songs that I would choose from this are the single White Riot, which is a completely different recording than from the American version, and White Man in Hammersmith Palais. So White Riot and the reggae-ish, or no, not yeah, that's right. White Man in Hammersmith Palais. So
Great
those
picks.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that album. And I think you make a good point because I see I don't think the Sex Pistols are a one-trick pony, but when you play them up against the Clash, they sound like a one-trick pony. Comparatively speaking, I think the Sex Pistols are a little more nuanced than that. But compared to the Clash had a wider palette for sure, I think.
By the way, the White Man in Hammersmith Palais, I'm cheating a little bit because I said my favorite is the the English version. White Man in Hammersmith Palais was a single that was added to the American version. It's not on the original British version. Okay. So um so they're
That's
both
allowed.
yeah,
That's
okay. So
allowed.
they're both from the Clash, two different ones. Okay.
Well,
Oh,
that was your
one,
number
one,
six.
one more thing I wanted to add. When I love when in White Man in Hammersmith Palais, um, when they're singing about fascism, and if Adolf Hitler came in today, it's funny because they're very anti. They were Antifa before there was Antifa.
Huh. My number six will not surprise you at all. You know, I love this album or this artist. The only the only thing would be is which of his two albums am I going to pick? We're talking about Iggy Pop.
Mhm.
So, you know, I'm a huge Iggy Pop fan. And so the one I'm going to give the nod to is The Idiot, the first one. So in 1977, there were four albums put out by Iggy Pop and David Bowie that they kind of worked on together. And it went in this order: The Idiot, Low, Heroes, and Lust for Life. That was the sequence. So Iggy was the bookends, and his was the first album. It's a really special album. Mostly the music, mostly composed by Bowie, and it has a real German krautrock, electronica, expressionist kind of feel to it. It's way ahead of its time, and it would influence Bowie's two albums. And it was interesting because shortly thereafter, Bowie put out Low, and he decided not to tour Low, and instead went on tour with Iggy Pop and supported The Idiot, and just played keyboards kind of in the shadows. And that was an interesting artistic choice. Um, I think The Idiot is maybe a perfect album. The more I listen to it, the more I love it. And it was really hard to pick a song from there because there are songs like Tiny Girls, which is kind of doo-wop with Bowie's wonderful sax playing on it. It's a great song. Mass Production's a great song, but I'm going to go with a couple obvious choices on here. One is Sister Midnight, which was heavily performed on that tour. And the other one, I think you got to go with China Girl. Um, I love Bowie's re-recording of it, but I have a slight preference for Iggy's version. Um, it's so great. I just love what the younger people would call the vibe of this album. That's a word we didn't use much growing up. Did you ever say vibe?
No, just with a kind of little device that looked like an electric banana, and
But
ugh.
this is one thing about the Idiot is it has so Lust for Life, which is a great album too. Lust for Life is more all over the map, but the Idiot has a real consistent production feel and thematic feel to it, and I like that. I like the Dum Dum Boys a lot too. That's a great song. So many favorites on here. But China Girl is a really special song. And, Iggy would just improvise lyrics, but this whole idea of, I'm going to corrupt you. And my little China Girl says, it's just great. But I'll give you television. I'll give you eyes of blue. I mean, I love the lyrics on here. I think Iggy I think Iggy was a great lyricist, very stream of consciousness, and I love it. And he would just go in and he would just make up these lyrics on the spot in the studio. And I'm like, how do you do that? Like, how do you write a song like China Girl just off the cuff like that? But apparently that's what he did. And so yeah, Sister Midnight and China Girl from The Idiot.
And mentioning those two songs reminds me of a little bit of trivia. If if you aren't real familiar with David Bowie, David Bowie, one of his best friends was Iggy. Okay, and I heard an interview shortly after Bowie died, and can you believe it's been almost 10 years since Bowie died? But Iggy said it wasn't right that he should die. I was the one that should have died, considering the way I treated myself. But they were very good friends, and with a few exceptions, um, Iggy never really had a lot of commercial success, financial commercial success. I think maybe the song Candy might have been one of the exceptions. But Bowie did something that was really sweet. Throughout the rest of his life, Bowie would record songs written by Iggy, some of them from these two albums, some from other ones. And he did it so that Iggy could get the songwriting royalties. And Iggy
Mhm.
has mentioned that Bowie kept him solvent, during some of his down periods. And so, of course, Bowie had a huge hit with China Girl, and that got a lot of money for Iggy. And then you mentioned the the other one you mentioned was, what was it? The other song you chose,
China Girl or Sister Midnight?
Sister Midnight, and that was and on Lodger, Bowie used the music for that for a song, Red Money. Um, and so, it's interesting that Bowie would like, oh, Iggy's suffering, so I gotta record one of his songs. And
One more piece of trivia. I'll bet you didn't know this. I'll bet you didn't know this. I think it was in 74 when Iggy was in kind of a mental treatment facility for
yes,
psychological problems. Bowie came and famously visited him, and apparently no one else really came and visited. I think it was in California. But Bowie brought a woman he was dating with him and her son. They were there in the room when Bowie visited Iggy. That kid, that son, you knew who that was?
no,
Slash
oh, really, really.
from Guns N' Roses. He was
Yeah.
just a kid, and he was there. He was there in that room. That's an interesting piece of trivia.
I didn't know that. I did know that during that visit, Bowie also smuggled in a lot of drugs to Iggy.
I
So
knew that. Yeah.
here's Iggy going through rehab, and Bowie smuggles him drugs. But
That's a good friend.
yeah, absolutely. All right, my number five is Brian Eno, Before and After Science. And uh, I'm so glad that you chose two tracks from the second side because I chose two tracks from the first side. I like the more manic um, side of the album. And there was one song that I love, but there's two that I like more. Um, and the one that I really love, the song Kurt's Rejoinder, it has this
Yeah.
avant-garde um, artist, Kurt Schwitters, doing a making all kinds of really weird noises, and it's just really funny. But uh, so the two songs that I like the most from this are, and hold on just a minute, the No One Receiving, okay, the opening track, that has a real good funky sound to it, and then King's Lead Hat, which if you know, two years previous, Robert Fripp did a guitar on Eno's Another Green World on the song. Uh, why am I forgetting this now? It's like one of my favorite Eno songs. Uh, it's from the uh,
First side,
yeah of,
St.
of, of the
Elmo's
of From Another Green World.
St.
Uh,
Elmo's Fire.
yeah, St. Elmo's Fire, and Fripp played an amazing guitar on it. Well, on the song King's Lead Hat, Fripp plays a similar guitar, but it's sped up. And I think it's sped up. I don't think Fripp is really playing that fast, but it's very, very hyperkinetic. And I love some of the lyrics, like, you know, uh, dark alley, four turkeys in a big black car. Um, and then
Yeah.
King's lead hat was a poker in the fire. King's lead hat was a mother to desire. King's lead hat made the Amazon much wider. It will come, it will come, it will surely come. Um, and what's funny is that the song doesn't really sound like Talking Heads, but Eno had just met with the Talking Heads and was in the process of producing their next album, more songs about buildings and food. So he kind of promoted them with that song. So the two songs from that album are No One Receiving and King's Lead Hat.
So we got a nice contrast for the playlist. Yeah, great. So we agree on that album. So number five is an album that I have no idea if this is going to be on your list or not. I have no idea. Probably be an honorable mention, but I got Pink Floyd at number five, the
Hmm.
album Animals.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a really cynical album. But when I'm in that cynical headspace, it makes perfect sense to me. It's a little Orwellian, not 1984, but Animal Farm. It divides the human race into three animals: dogs, pigs, and sheep. And there are times when I think that's pretty accurate. Um, I go through days where I feel more hopeful, and I go through other days where I really feel like, I really feel like, yeah, I think all of us go through that. I think we all go through different moods when we think about the fate of the world and which direction we're going. But this album is aged pretty well. It's got some great musicianship on it. Uh, it's a little Roger Waters dominated. I think it was a really good concept. I like it. Great, great guitar, great keyboards, great bass. I mean, everybody's great drumming. It's just got everybody on fire on this album. some nice space, but some nice busy parts too. And it's got a lot of dynamics on it. Yeah, I like it. So I'm going to pick, there's only three animals. So which two animals am I going to pick? I'm going to pick pigs and sheep, but they're all great tracks. And yeah, I think I like this album even more than when it came out. It just deepens with me over time. So Pink Floyd Animals at number five.
The the album was a big influence to the great progressive artist Steven Wilson also.
Okay.
Just want to mention that. A little bit of trivia. On one of my trips to London, we were taking a little trip on a boat down the Thames and back up again. And we went past the power station that the picture was taken. And I said, probably a bit too loud, "Where's the flying pig?" And a bunch of people laughed. So they got what I was talking about. But where's the flying pig? They probably thought I was stoned, but still, damn stupid American. Um, okay. Uh, now we're down to my top four. And of these top four, only one of them has any connection to punk. And this is not one of them. This is my favorite album by Steely Dan. It is Asia. And it is a smooth, slick California rock album from, 77. But it's got a lot of great guest musicians on there. And it was Becker and Fagan at their, I think, at their musical peak. Okay. They made a couple albums after that, but I don't think, I mean, they were like constantly moving up. And then this was the peak of what they did. Um, so hard, the half dozen songs on there, hard to choose one. But I would go with, and it's very, very jazz oriented also, by the way. Uh, I would go with Asia, which is a beautiful song. And then my favorite song, since I first got the album, and that's Deacon Blues. So Asia and Deacon Blues from Steely Dan's Asia.
Wow. Great song picks. So my number four, I don't think this will surprise you. We try to combine the objective and the subjective. Um, these are our favorite albums, but also sometimes you just got to look at an album and say that's a great album objectively as well. And that's where I'm at with number four. How can you argue against Fleetwood Mac's Rumors?
How can you?
A perfect album, not a flaw on it. And, it's a mega hit, right? I mean, it's one of the top maybe 12 or 15 selling albums of all time. You got the Eagles' greatest hits and Michael Jackson's Thriller, and Rumors is right up there as one of the best selling albums of all time. Uh, but you get these people like you and I are both huge Elton John fans. You sometimes get someone like Elton John or Fleetwood Mac that is a big commercial success, but it's also a critical favorite. So being popular and being good don't have to be exclusive. They often are, right? Some of the
Right.
biggest selling albums of all time, in my opinion, aren't that good. The Rumors is just undeniable. Uh, I don't know what can you. I mean, I think enough's been written about it, so I don't think there's anything that I can say about it. But I like these two. I'm going to pick two songs that are kind of more band songs because there are songs like Christine McVie's Songbird, which is a beautiful, beautiful ballad. But it's sort of all Christine. It almost sounds like it could be from a Christine McVie solo album. So I'm going to go with Go Your Own Way, which is so biting. And when they do that in concert, they look at each other with daggers in their eyes. Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, they play that up for theater. They just look at each other when they play that song. It's great. Uh, and then The Chain. The Chain is a true band song, and I love it. And that great little bass riff by John McVie. Yeah, powerful songs. Go Your Own Way in The Chain, but Rumors, perfectly played, perfectly sung, perfectly produced. And when you hear the background story that they were up at Sly Stone's studio doing massive amounts of cocaine, it's a miracle that they ever pulled this off. But it was just, it really was lightning in a bottle. Fleetwood Mac Rumors at number 4.
When people who have never had any real experience with drugs, usually those people, will say that drugs never were able to make good albums. I just bring up three examples. Um, the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper LSD, um, and actually the four because Marijuana with Bob Dylan's Highway 61 Revisited. But the other is the Rolling Stones, Exile on Main Street, Heroin. And for cocaine, it's Fleetwood Mac's Rumors. You can practically hear the razor blades scraping on the mirrors when you listen to that album. And yet, it's like that album never would have been what it was if they weren't all taking coke at the time.
And some people, I mean, I don't know this album very well, but there's a Black Sabbath album. I think it's Bloody Sabbath, which is also considered one of the great cocaine albums.
Yes, yes.
But anyway, yeah, I agree with you. Drugs can be devastating or they can be facilitating. Depends on the, it just depends on a lot of factors.
Okay, my number three. This is the one that has a connection to punk, and that is that if the Clash and the Sex Pistols were the Beatles and the Stones of punk, Elvis Costello was the Bob Dylan of punk. And My Aim is True. Fantastic, fantastic album. Um, and it's an album that, as you said, it was before the attractions, and yet I'm not sure if Bruce Thomas and Pete Thomas were on Watching the Detectives, but Steve Naive was okay. He played the organ on Watching the Detectives, and Watching the Detectives is one of my favorite songs on there. Um, and it has a kind of faux reggae, rhythm to it. But let's see if I can remember the lyrics when he says, "You think you're alone until you realize you're in it. Now fear is here to stay. Uh, love is only for a visit. They call it instant justice when it's past the legal limit. Someone scratching at the window. I wonder who is it? The detectives come to check if you belong to the parents who are ready to hear their worst about the daughter's disappearance. Oh, it nearly took a miracle to get you to stay. It only took my little fingers to blow you away." And I just love that song. So the last song on the album, Watching the Detectives, and I'm so glad that you chose Less Than Zero, because I wanted to choose Less Than Zero, but I had to choose the song that made me first hear this album. I was driving to ASU. I was going to ASU at the time, 1977, and I heard this song, and it's like my ears popped up, and I go, "Whoa, what is this?" And it was "The Angels Want to Wear My Red Shoes,"
Mm.
and it has an opening line that has been made into T-shirts and posters. "I used to be disgusted, but now I try to be amused." Um, and so, that's "The Angels Want to Wear My Red Shoes." I still don't know what he means by that, but I
I
just
don't either.
I just love the song. Um, so that's great that you chose two that I didn't, because now we'll get four great songs from the album.
Watching the Detectives has the greatest drums on it. Just like the rhythm section is so good on that song. Um, my number three is an album you've already mentioned, and that is Steely Dan's Asia. So I have that at number three. I love that album a lot. So, people call it yacht rock. That kind of irks me a little bit. I don't know why. It just kind of irks me because smooth doesn't necessarily mean boring or chill or background music. This is a very engaging album. It's an audiophile's wet dream for sure. Like if I were going to go into a stereo electronics store shopping for speakers, say I wanted to get a nice set of speakers, I might bring my copy of Asia with me to test the speakers. It's just such a beautifully recorded album. I think it doesn't sound safe to me. It sounds very inventive.
Mhm.
My two songs were the same two that you picked, Asia and Deacon Blues, so I've got to pick another song.
Pick another one. Anything.
Um, Asia, so I'm going to give you a choice between two songs. How's that? I'll
Okay.
pick two and you can pick from my two. But Asia, that drumming from Steve Gadd, ugh, Asia is such a complicated song, musically very sophisticated. These guys were at another level. They were in the stratosphere. Bernard Purdy and all these different people. But so I'm going to say let's pick between Peg or Home at Last.
Oh, tough choice. Let's go with Peg, because that was probably the biggest single from it.
Okay.
With Michael McDonald in the background.
Yeah, I forgot about that. And
And
again,
he almost sounds
lyrically,
like an instrument.
lyrically, it's about a model and a photographer, and it's very salacious. I mean, that's the thing about Steely Dan. They always had this smooth sound, but when you dig into Donald Fagen's lyrics, they are anything but, just like we were talking about Rumors. Rumors is full of dysfunction in the lyrics, right? And
Right.
and on Deacon Blues when he sings I crawl like a viper and I want to die behind the wheel. These are not these are not cushy lyrics. He was very cynical and cutting, and I just love it. So yeah, okay, we'll go with Peg. And so Asia, I love that album, and I agree with you on one point. I do think it's absolutely the peak. They would do Gaucho next, which is a very good album, but is a slight step down. I agree with you. Then they broke up, and then they reformed and did two albums that I've never really been able to engage with.
Yes. Gaucho is a very good album, but Asia is a perfect album.
Yeah, I agree with you.
All right. Now we're down to my top two. Um, those of you who know me or have been watching this know that even though I'm choosing a lot of albums that are not prog albums, because I love a lot of music that's not prog, I am a prog head. And probably my, if not my favorite prog artist or prog group, my second favorite prog group. And if you count their entire career, I would put them ahead of Genesis, because Genesis was there for a while. But this is Yes. And Yes's early albums were amazing. I mean, one after another, starting from their first two albums are good, but starting from their third album, the Yes album, all the way up through here. And this the, is it the last fantastic album Yes made? Yeah, but it's not the last. not the last album with great songs, but it's Going for the One. And if there's any flaw to the album, it would be the Hypnosis cover, which is not because of the guy's naked butt, but just because it doesn't really reflect what the sound of the album is. It was 77. Yes was starting to be influenced by what was happening in music at the time, but it's not like 90125. It's not uh, a commercial album. And uh, I mean, every song is good. You've got the the classic, what I consider the classic Yes lineup. Those of you who are Bill Bruford fans, don't be mad at me. Bruford was fantastic, but Alan White was with them for a lot longer on drums. So you got Alan White on drums, and you've got Chris Squire, the amazing late great Chris Squire on bass, and John Anderson, of course, on vocals, and Rick Wakeman on keyboards. Okay. Did I miss anybody? Oh, yeah,
Steve
Steve
Howe.
Howe on guitar. Steve Howe on guitar. Speaking of which, one of the songs I like the best is the title track with some great Steve Howe guitar opening it, and that is Going for the One. And it's a real up-tempo song. The, but however, the song that I like even more, and you might be surprised by this, Gene, but for I would say the last 10 to, let's see, what probably last 10 to 20 years, because this became my favorite Yes song when I played it for EJ some time back. And it's always been my favorite Yes song since, even beyond Close to the Edge and all of those. And that is the song Awaken.
Hmm.
Um, and it's amazing. It goes through all these changes, and there's a middle part that is just it's still I got goosebumps right now. You can't see them here, but I have goosebumps just listening to John Anderson's singing on that. When he sings "Awaken, Gentle Mass Touching," it's just really, really powerful. And just listen to if you're watching this and you haven't heard Awaken, listen to Awaken by Yes. So Going for the One and Awaken from Going for the One.
Awaken is a great song. I agree with you 100%. And I'm not surprised it's your favorite song. It's that good. My number two is an album you mentioned, and that's David Bowie's Heroes. So you are the bigger David. I'm a huge David Bowie fan. You are the bigger David Bowie fan, but I think I'm the bigger 77 David Bowie fan. I've got Heroes at number two, which I love. And Visconti, you were joking about that cartoon. By the way, that cartoon is not a still cartoon for people watching. It is a video cartoon, a moving cartoon. And a lot of people think that Brian Eno recorded these albums, recorded this, what they call the Berlin trilogy, even though Heroes was the only album made entirely in Berlin. This features Robert Fripp all over the place, the great solo on the title track Heroes. But Visconti did so many innovative things in 77. And on here, he did a lot of things with microphone placement that were very special and very unique. You hear it on the title track where he had put three sets of microphones in the studio and then when Bowie increased the volume of his voice, these microphones would open their gates. And Visconti was very innovative, and he wasn't a perfect producer, but when he was on, like he was in '77, or like he was with T Rex, I like his productions with T Rex. I like his productions with Thin Lizzy. He's done a number of really good production jobs, and Heroes is still sounds fresh to me. The production style still sounds really cool, and I like it. So I'm going to go with the song Heroes, the title track. I think you have to. And then I'm going to go with Blackout, which is kind of just a personal favorite. I like Bowie's unhinged vocals on that and the lyrics. So Heroes at number two.
And here's a little bit of trivia that I don't know if you told me this, Gene, but just in the last year, I heard this, and that is that the lyrics of the song Heroes, Bowie was influenced by looking out the hotel window near at the wall, at the Berlin Wall, and seeing Tony Visconti and his then girlfriend making out by the wall. And so the lovers in Heroes are supposedly Visconti and his girlfriend.
Yeah, that's true. I would add to that the reason that story didn't come out for a long time is it wasn't really his girlfriend. Visconti was married. And this was I think the secretary or assistant that was in the studio, and he was basically starting an affair with her. And so they kept that under wraps for a long time because he was married. But
Good
Visconti
to know.
was a bit of a dog, I guess. So he was
All
married
right.
to Mary Hopkin at the time.
Yes, that's right. That's right. We had joy, we had fun, we had seasons in the sun. Okay, my number one. I told you that you might be surprised, not that it was on my list, but that it was number one above all these other ones. But it's because I totally agree with you. Fleetwood Mac, Rumors.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Fleetwood
Wow.
Mac, Fleetwood Mac, there were a number of Fleetwood Macs, and the common denominator was always Mick Fleetwood and John McVie. But they kept changing the lineup over time. Um, and in 1975, they hired on this California duet who had made one album, Buckingham Nicks, um, Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham, and it was and they put out the album Fleetwood Mac, and it was a bestseller. It really did well, and everybody thought, "Wow, this is a great album. How can you top this?" Well, you can top it with a marriage breakup and two marriage breakups, I think, and cocaine. But we talked about Blood on the Tracks and Peter Hamill's Over, and this is another breakup album, Rumors. Um, and the there was basically they were all having sex with each other at this point, except I think nobody was having sex with Lindsey Buckingham, which kind of made him bitter. Um, and especially since he was the best looking one there. And he's like, I'm the best looking one. Why is nobody having sex with me? To this day, there's arguments over who left who broke up with who was cheating on whom. We do know that Stevie Nicks was having an affair with Mick Fleetwood, but um, Lindsay and Stevie both wrote bitter, beautiful songs. And Lindsay wrote the song "Go Your Own Way," which you chose as one of them. And you're right on the video. I don't know if it's legit or if their anger, if their venom at one is really there. Um, but they are looking at each other and throwing daggers out of their eyes as they sing this. And it's a Lindsey Buckingham song. Um, and he's basically telling his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend, Stevie, you can go your own way. I don't care anymore. But he did care. He still did. I mean, whether she did or not, I don't know. However, I would argue that she did because a song that was recorded for the album and it was released as a B-side and later on CD, it was put on there and it deserves to be. And that's Stevie Nicks' masterpiece, Silver Spring. Um, and it's just a really poignant song um, because you know she's basically accusing him of cheating on her, and I could have loved you forever, but like and if you watch the video of this, um, he sings the with on the chorus, and they look at each other, but she turns directly toward him and says, "You'll never get away from the sound of the woman who loves you. Was I just a fool?" And it's like she's screaming it at him. It's not just singing, she's screaming it at him. It's like you're seeing this fight right there. And there's a million other great songs. One of the things I think is interesting about the album, or just about this incarnation of Fleetwood Mac, is that Lindsey Buckingham and Christine McVie had very similar voices. And when they sang together, it almost sounded like double tracking. And you have, a guy and a girl. He had a fairly high voice for a man, not a John Anderson high voice, but he definitely was a tenor singer. And was kind of a alto. And so when you just listen to the album casually, you have to listen and say, wait, is that Christine or is that Lindsey? The other thing I want to point out about this album is Lindsey Buckingham was an amazing producer. He might still be, but at the time he was. And he did some stuff with this album that just leaves me floored by the sound of it. So, um, Go Your Own Way, which you already mentioned, and Silver Spring.
Wow. I am surprised. I'm not surprised you like the album, but to have it at number one, yeah, that just blows my mind. I had no idea. So for the viewers that are watching this, we've known each other 52 years, but there's albums we haven't talked about in a long time. And part of this exercise is us checking in and getting reacquainted with our tastes. And tastes, of course, change over the years. And so this is a big surprise to me, a pleasant surprise. I couldn't be more thrilled. It's a great album. But yeah, I had no idea that that would be your number one album, 77.
That I should
Um,
place it above Asia, My Aim is True, and Going for the One also. Surprised myself too.
yeah, it's that's why we go through this exercise. And my number one won't surprise you, I don't think, but it's David Bowie's Low. So I've got Bowie at the 2-1 spot. And I also had Iggy Pop's The Idiot in here. I wanted to get all four albums that were recorded in 77. I wanted to get them all in here because I love those four albums, but I picked three of them. And Low, again, I was talking about Visconti, really innovative drum sounds on here. Later in 1980, Peter Gabriel would put out his third album, Melt, and Hugh Padgham and Steve Lillywhite would, well, especially Hugh Padgham, would invent that gated drum sound that kind of dominated the 80s. But before that, Visconti came up with and I've read about it, but I'm not a gearhead, so I can't remember what he did. But he came up with the drum sound on this album that is really unique and was like nothing that we had heard at the time. And yeah, Lowe's a grower that just, as I go through life over the last 48 years, I fall in love with Lowe over and over again. And I like it more every year. And I like it more today than I did when it came out. It's an incredible sounding album. I'm glad you took one of the tracks from the B side because my two song choices are from the A side. They're Sound and Vision and Always Crashing in the Same Car.
Mhm.
But man, you could take really, it's a perfect album. So you could just throw a dart in Lover's Eyes. There's where you go. No, you could throw a dart and just pick any song. So David Bowie's Low, a lot's been written about it. We talked about it extensively on the David Bowie discography. You can check us out there. It's on here. Just go in to my channel and type in David Bowie in the little magnifying glass, and you can pull it up. So that's it. Well, that was fun, wasn't it? And
It
we'll do
certainly
our
was.
honorable mentions next. Any
Oh,
comments on our top 10 before we move on to honorable mentions?
not as many surprises this time. One totally came out of left field for me, and that's the Fela Kuti.
Mhm.
But the other choices that you made, I say, yeah, that's Gene.
Hmm. That's what I
Oh,
thought I thought that would be your takeaway. Um,
okay. So honorable mentions.
mhm.
Okay. So did you have any comments about my top 10, by the way?
Um, just the 1-2 spot. I was a little surprised by the Yes and Fleetwood Mac being so high up there. So I think no surprises in the album selections, but the positioning surprised me.
My honorable mentions. This one I kind of wanted to put in there just so people could hear some tracks from it, but it's the second Genesis live album and the last one with the last Genesis album recorded with Steve Hackett, and that is Seconds Out. And I've liked it ever since I first got it, but on vinyl, it seemed to be a little bit dull in the production. And when it was re-released on CD later, it was much more dynamic. It's a great collection because it, it's before Genesis totally became a vehicle for Phil Collins, but Phil was singing, and it has songs from their first two albums, first two Phil Collins albums, from Trick of the Tail and Wind and Wuthering, and some great songs from there. So you get to hear those songs, but also Phil was still singing a lot of songs from the Peter Gabriel period. And he proved that though he wasn't Peter Gabriel, he could do a good job with these songs. And in particular, um, they do the epic, the Peter Gabriel era epic, "Supper's Ready," and Phil Collins, his voice is great on it. Some people think he does better than Peter. I don't, but he still, it's a great album. So Genesis Seconds Out. Speaking of Peter Gabriel, he made his first album that year. And I was really excited to hear it because I love Peter Gabriel. I have ever since I discovered him in Genesis. And although his first two solo albums didn't grab me the way the third one did, I still really like this album. Um, Gabriel hadn't quite found his solo voice yet, and he got Canadian producer Bob Ezrin to produce it, and he brought in some interesting people on. Um, uh, I think are both Steve Hunter and Dick Wagner on this album. I don't remember. I know that at least one of them is. Um,
Yeah.
and and then you had Robert Fripp was on it, and it's just there's there's kind of some weird types of songs. Some of them, like Moribund the Burgermeister, are almost like Peter Gabriel Genesis period songs. Um, Here Comes the Flood is powerful, powerful song. And Bob Ezrin did uh, a big the Bob Ezrin big sound. It actually sounded better when Gabriel recorded it later, just with piano solo. But if I had to choose one song from it, it would be Salisbury Hill, a song that is that Gabriel wrote about leaving Genesis, and it was a hit, and it's one of the few radio hits to be in 7/4 time. And I didn't realize that till my friend EJ pointed it out. He said, "The song is in 7/4 time." I said, No, yes." I didn't want him to say something I didn't realize, but no, I hadn't realized, but it is. It's in 7/4 time. Um, then we've got uh, Supertramp, Even in the Quietest Moments, which is probably one of the proggiest, maybe the proggiest of Supertramp's albums. Um, and it's just a really powerful album. It's not as up tempo, not as bouncy as other Supertramp albums, because it has it has a different sound to it, a different feel, or as you would say, Gene, a different vibe to it than uh, the other ones. But probably one of my favorite songs from there are, I mean, it does have the bouncy give a little bit, but I love Fool's Overture.
Mm.
Fool's Overture, which is the proggiest song they probably ever did. Um, and then another one I wanted to put in my top 10, and I feel bad that I didn't, but I feel bad that you didn't also. Neither of us put it in here, and that's Television's Marquee Moon. Um, and it's my favorite television album.
Mhm.
And it's, from the CBGB's New York thing, along with Talking Heads and some others. But Television was one of these post-punk bands. But what you got is Tom Verlaine. His guitar playing is like a post-punk Richard Thompson. I mean, the song Marquee Moon is very reminiscent of some of the extended jams that Richard Thompson did. And I've never read that was he influenced by Richard Thompson, but I wouldn't be surprised if he
Right.
were. And then the first album by this band that is a band I like a lot. They're not my favorite band, but I love them. I mean, I've loved them more in the past several years. And part of this probably is the influence of my friend EJ, and that's Rush, A Farewell to Kings.
Ah.
Um, and I think that A Farewell to Kings is better than some of their earlier albums that people talk about more. But I mean, from beginning to end, this is it's a really, really powerful album. So, A Farewell to Kings by Rush.
Wow. So yeah, The Rush is a surprise, and I think it's a great pick. Seconds Out, you were talking about that. I think that's a great album, and I like two songs that I think Phil Collins really pulls off that Gabriel had done. One is Carpet Crawlers, and the other is Cinema Show. And I think he just really knocks both of those out of the park. So yeah, great picks, Jim. Um, I have seven. I said it was a loaded year, and well, it was a loaded year. So what do these seven have in common? Well, I can tell you that at least five of these have 5 stars on All Music. So these are, and maybe six of them do. So one of them, I'm wondering if this was an omission from you. Do I have the wrong year? When did Jethro Tull put out Songs from the Wood?
77.
And that didn't make your honorable mention.
No, it didn't. And I really like it. I really like it a lot, but it did not make my honorable mention.
Yeah, that I was listening to that for this project, and it and it's funny, the album afterwards, Heavy Horses, I just don't respond to as well as this album. But boy, I was listening to this album, Hunting Girl.
Mhm.
Man, that band is so nimble on that song. Yeah, I love it.
And it's got Ring
But
Out Solstice Bells too,
yeah,
which
and
is
that's not even my favorite from the album, but still great. But yeah, I mean, the title track and at the end, it's kind of a joke, but that song P Brock,
uh-huh.
P Break,
Tea
that's a
break,
great
Captain.
song too. Yeah, it's great. I have on here Ian Dury, New Boots and Panties. God, this is a fun album. His best, I believe. I don't know, just irresistible. But so many great songs. Sweet Gene Vincent, and of course, Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll, and yeah. Now, Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll was added to the album later on subsequent releases, if that wasn't on here, it wouldn't be on my honorable mentions. It's got to have that song. Um, the other five I have on here, two that you mentioned. Um, I have Television, Marquee Moon. Yeah, Verlaine's a guitar hero. I love it. The title track is one of my favorite songs. Um, just missed. I've got The Clash on here. I agree with you. Great album. Didn't make my top 10, but I love that. But I think I'm a little partial to a couple later Clash albums, but I still love this. I think it's a perfect debut. I have Kraftwerk, Trans Europe
Rothberg.
Express. Might be their finest album. Some people think Man Machine is their finest album. Uh, this is a perfect album. I can't believe it didn't make my top 10. I would have liked to have gotten that on there with another one of my honorable mentions, Iggy Pop's Lust for Life, because then I would have had like all this German and Bowie and this whole thing. I love those five albums from that year. But yeah, Kraftwerk and Iggy Pop, Lust for Life. I was listening to Lust for Life again this week, and there are parts you don't think about. I mean, you think about Lust for Life, the title track, and The Passenger, which is a great song. But there's another song on there, the title escapes me, but it has the lyric. He sings, Jesus, this is Iggy. It's hilarious. There's so much humor on this album, and I love the Sales Brothers and Ricky Gardner. I love the band on here. Ricky Gardner, by the way, wrote the music for The Passenger. That's one of Bowie's best songs. So, and what's the last one I have on here? A jazz album. Big fan of Weather Report. They put out an album called Heavy Weather with Birdland and Teen Town and A Remark You Made and all these great, great songs. Joe Zawinul is a friggin' genius. Birdland is one of the most sophisticated jazz songs ever, combining the old and the new. So I'm a big fan of Weather Report, Heavy. So let me run those down again. Kraftwerk, Trans Europe Express, Television, Marquee Moon, The Clash. I didn't specify British or American. Iggy Pop, Lust for Life, Weather Report, Heavy Weather, Ian Dury, New Boots and Panties, and Jethro Tull, Songs from the Wood.
Great choices. Okay, so who did we see live? Well,
Yep.
um, thanks to you, Gene, I saw Talking Heads live. It's funny because I discovered Talking Heads and played them for you, but you became a bigger Talking Heads fan than I was for a while. And Ralph and I helped you move, and we were really tired, and you asked us if we wanted to go see Talking Heads at outdoor Compton Terrace, wasn't it? The old Compton
Right.
Terrace.
Right.
Um, and it was summer. And for those of you who have
August.
never been, yeah, August in Arizona can be very hot and humid, and it was hot and humid. But just a little anecdote about this. We got there. You drove, Gene, and
Hmm.
we went in, and then you said, "Oh God, I don't have I left my ticket back at my apartment," and well, you decide basically screw it. I'm just going to go ahead and buy another one. So three of us went in there, and it was really humid and it was really hot, and we were sitting out on the lawn. I loved the whole show, but the beginning of it was uncomfortable. And about just a little bit before the intermission, a soft rain came down, just enough to cool everything off. And I just got so excited and I was up and dancing and it was just so much fun. Um, and then the punchline of all of this is we go out afterwards, you and Ralph and I talking about how much we love this. By the way, this was on the Stop Making Sense tour. But we were talking about how much we loved it, and we got into the car, and you go, "Oh, damn! Here's my ticket." You had it right there in your truck.
Right.
Yeah.
I still
But
have
you had
that ticket. I
yeah,
still have that ticket.
you have a virgin copy of it. Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I thought I thought that was I felt bad for you, but it was funny. It was funny.
Hmm.
So I've seen Talking Heads, thanks to you. Seen Peter Hamill, yeah. Uh, David Bowie several times. We talked about that over and over again. I never did see The Clash live, and you did. Um, Never saw Brian Eno live or Steely Dan. Saw Elvis Costello several times. A number of times I've seen Elvis Costello. Um, Never saw Yes in concert. I've seen members of Yes, but not Yes itself. Never saw Fleetwood Mac live. Genesis several times, including with the Phil Collins incarnation. Um, Peter Gabriel several times, a couple of the best shows I've ever seen. Supertramp, saw them in uh, 78 or 79 at the Veterans Memorial Coliseum. That was really great. And I've seen Rush a few times, thanks to EJ, who raised my appreciation for Rush. And so whenever Rush is here, EJ always asks me, "You want to go see Rush?" And I say, "Absolutely."
That's a very impressive list. Yeah, so for mine, I've seen David Bowie 4 times. I've seen Steely Dan once, believe it or not. Um, so there was a album that was taken from that tour, and it was called Alive in America.
Hmm.
So it was when after Steely Dan had broken up and taken that long hiatus, when they reformed, they surprised everybody by going out on the road. And Walter Becker did a couple songs from his solo album, and Fagan did a song from his solo album, Kama Kyriad, or whatever that album was called. And it was a great show with all the backup singers. Everybody was great. The sound was great. It was out at Desert Sky. I saw Fleetwood Mac, as I mentioned earlier, on their Mirage tour, and one of the three best rhythm sections I've ever seen. John McVie and Mick Fleetwood are just so tight in concert. I've also seen Stevie Nicks solo one time at the US Festival in California.
Oh, I never saw Fleetwood Mac, but I what but I've mentioned this before. Stevie Nicks flirted with me after a Todd Rundgren concert.
Oh yeah, all
And she was really
right.
drunk. So I've met Stevie, sort of met Stevie Nicks.
I have seen Iggy Pop 5 times, I think. The first time was in '79 on the new, no, it was I always thought it was the New Values tour, but it was the album after that. Zombie Birdhouse, I think. No? Anyway, I saw him in '79. Um, and that band was amazing. It had Scott Thurston and Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols, and you can look it up. It's a really interesting band. Costello, I've seen, I believe, 3 times um, at Mesa Amphitheater, at the Fleeg Festival. We were at that together.
Right.
Um, Talking Heads, I have seen. You're going to like this. I've seen them 2 3/4 time.
Two and three quarter.
Do you know why I'm saying that? Because after I saw the Fear of Music tour and then the Speaking in Tongues tour, which would be filmed for the Stop Making Sense movie. I mean, we were so lucky to be there because some people think that's the best live concert DVD ever. I then saw The Heads,
Oh, okay.
Tina Weymouth, Chris France, Jerry Harrison, and Jeanette Napolitano from Concrete Blonde. Yeah, they toured as The Heads. David Byrne would not allow them to call themselves the Talking Heads. Um, I've seen The Clash twice, Jethro Tull twice. I saw Weather Report at Celebrity Theater. And then later went to see Jaco Pastorius at a club show. Weather Report was far better than Jaco Pastorius. The Jaco Pastorius concert, it's a great thing to say, hey, I saw Jaco Pastorius. But to be honest with you, the Weather Report show was far better. And Wayne Shorter is after seeing that show, I've decided he's my second favorite sax player after John Coltrane. Shorter is one of the great, great sax players. So, yeah, it was a great show. So that's who I've seen.
You mentioned favorite rhythm sections. Let me see if I can guess the other two. Sly and Robbie.
Yep,
Okay. And this one, Chris and Tina.
yep.
All right, I got the other two. Okay. I never knew that um, Janet Napolitano was a member of Four Non Blondes. I mean, she was in the U.S. government and
No,
you know,
Concrete Blonde.
oh, Concrete Blonde. I mean, Concrete Blonde. But Janet Napolitano. Yeah.
No, Jeanette.
Oh, I thought you said Janet Napolitano.
No, Johnette. Johnette. So the lead
Okay.
singer of Concrete Blonde. Yeah, it was a great show actually. But yeah, very unusual. But yeah, I mean, you still had Harrison, Weymouth, and France. So how could you go wrong? There was no David Byrne. It was still a
Yeah.
great show.
Well, there were some hard feelings for a while there. I think they've buried the hatchet, but they say they're not going to be performing together again. So,
Yeah. So, and I understand they had their heyday. And to be honest with you, their last couple albums, as good as they were, they peaked. I don't know what, Remain in Light, maybe?
I
No,
uh
Speaking in Tongues. Speaking in
speaking in
Tongues.
tongues. Yeah, yeah.
And that
Um,
tour. Little
they
Creatures never really hit with me the same way.
they had some fun, goofy albums after that. Um, I did like the album. I think was this their last album? Sax and Violins.
That was the name of a compilation, I think. It was
Oh,
an
okay.
outtake. It was an outtake. So, well, I really enjoyed this, Professor. And to you viewers who might still be hanging on, we appreciate your comments and we hope you'll engage with the channel.
And in another week, 1978, another fine year.
Yeah, and I'll only have 5 honorable mentions for that year, but yeah, that's going to be fun. We're going to enjoy that. So, well, as I say here in Bonita, Mexico, buen dia.
And I will say, I'm sure glad that the weather has broken. We went to my grandson's eighth birthday party out in Chandler, and it was supposed to rain, but it didn't. But the nice breeze. It was just so nice and cool, and because I'm sick of the heat, so it was really good.